everybody, and welcome back to our Light of Kailash lecture series. Buonasera a tutti e bentornati alla nostra serie di talks che si chiama La luce del Kailash. Siamo felici di essere di nuovo a Marigar West nella libreria e di fare questo evento in concomitanza con i racconti in biblioteca. So we're happy to be in Marigar West again, doing a joint collaboration with the Library Talks here in Marigar. And today we're very happy to welcome Dr. Cristiana De Falco, who's sitting right here next to me. Siamo felici di dare il benvenuto alla dottoressa Cristiana De Falco, qui seduta accanto a me. E oggi lei ci parlerà della Dakini Mandarava e della sua storia, della sua vita. Who today will be telling us about Dakini Mandarava and her life story. Cristiana studied at the University of Naples L'Orientale. Cristiana ha studiato all'Università L'Orientale di Napoli ed è una traduttrice dal tibetano all'italiano e all'inglese, and she translates from Tibetan into Italian and English. She's worked on several books, and her thesis has been dovrei parlare vicino a te perché non sapevo. Her thesis has been translated and published as The Life of Padmasambhava by Shangshung Publications in 2005. La sua tesi di laurea, La vita di Padmasambhava, è stata pubblicata dalle edizioni Shangshung nel 2005. Continua a tradurre e a lavorare su diversi testi e anche lavorando su traduzione di insegnamenti di Tsogyal Namkha Norbu, anche di Yeshe Silvano Namkhai. And she keeps on working and translating both simultaneously and on written text. I won't say much more, non dirò molto di più, gli lascio la parola, and the talk will last about an hour. And if you have any questions, you can write them in the chat or ask at the end. Thank you so much and welcome, Cristiana.
Quindi siamo già su Zoom, quando devo mettere, possiamo mettere la prima delle diapositive. Sì.
We're gonna share now.
Ok.
And I'm gonna
Ok, poi la cambio io. Okay.
So now people can see you and also the screen.
Okay. Okay, so good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here, both people who are here in presence and people who are online, and especially those who are here, thank you very much because it's a very hot day. And so I want to dedicate this event to Nina Robinson, who has dedicated many years of her life to teaching the Mandarava practice here in the Dzogchen community, having been appointed by Tsogyal Namkha Norbu. And so she's always been a great source of inspiration for me. So hello, Nina. I hope you're listening, and I hope I'll do a good job. Okay. So in this life, I've had the good fortune to study the life stories of three great exceptional beings who contributed very much to the spread of Tibetan Buddhism in Tibet and India, Nepal, and neighboring countries, who are Guru Padmasambhava or Guru Rinpoche, and his two main consorts, Yeshe Tsogyal, Tibetan, and Mandarava, Indian. So I wrote my degree thesis many years ago now on a biography of Padmasambhava, written by Taranatha, a very renowned Tibetan scholar and historian, born in 1575. And this biography is important because it states that Guru Padmasambhava, who also had other names, of course, who was born from the womb, not as the most renowned traditions say that he was born from a lotus flower. Actually, the name Padmasambhava means born from Padma, from the lotus. But anyway, Taranatha says that he was the son of a member of the royal family named Srado, or in Odhyana language, or Sridhara, whereas the most famous version says that he appeared magically on the stems of a lotus flower in the middle of the Dhanakosha lake in Udyana, and then was adopted by the king, King Indra Bodhi, who took him as his son. And so there is something to say about this, mainly that the biographies that talk about magical birth, miraculous birth in Tibetan Zukye, belong to the Terma tradition, so the hidden treasure tradition, whereas this text plus maybe something else belong to the Kama tradition. So there is this short lineage that is called Terma, Nyejut Terma. That is short because teaching is hidden, is compiled and then hidden, and then rediscovered many centuries later, and in the meantime it's unavailable. And so this is why it's short, because it goes right back to the source. And the Ringyut Kama, there is a long lineage of transmission, because teachings are handed down the lineage from master to disciple and so on. And these are two of the three modes of transmission of the teachings in the Nyingma school. The third modality is called Tangnan, pure vision. Okay. And so this biography by Taranatha belongs to the Kama tradition. Then years later, I happened to study Yeshe Tsogyal's most known biography, the one that is translated into English. There are actually three translations. One is by Tartan Tulku, and it's called Mother of Knowledge. And another one by Kit Dauman called Sky Dancer, that is also been translated into Italian as La Danzatrice del Cielo. And another one called Lady of the Lotus Born. There is this one that I happen to like very much. And I just studied this biography because it's fantastic, it's wonderful, and I was really enticed by the words of, by her words, because actually it's, in most of the book, it's herself who tells her story. So the narrator is first person narrator, and sometimes also third person. And so this makes it very, very powerful, and she chooses very powerful and expressive words. And this is also a terma discovered by Takshan Nuden Doje. And I gave two talks here in this library on this life story, one in 2017 and one in 2019. I think we should change. Come si cambia? È venuto qui, non succede. Okay, so this is a photo of a statue of Guru Padmasambhava. That the story is that he saw it and says, it looks like me.
Adesso stiamo vedendo se ci sono altre persone che... No. Se no possiamo fare così. Ok, adesso funziona.
Ok, però io voglio andare all'altra.
Allora basta che vai qui.
No, quella dopo.
Allora continua.
Ok. Okay, so this year, 2024, was the 40th anniversary of Chogyal Nankai Norbu's pilgrimage to the Maratika cave that he did in 1984. 1984 was the first year of a 60-year cycle. So he thought it would be auspicious to go there. So he went with a number of his disciples, and held two retreats, one on the way in a place called Tolugompa, and another one in Maratika in the cave. No, please stay there. This is a photo of the Maratika cave, the bigger cave. This is the top. There's a big hole on the top. And unfortunately, I wasn't there in 1984, but then I managed to go by myself with a friend in 1988. And Rinpoche went there and gave a retreat on the Nyala Pema Dundul's terma called Sedrup Gondu, another long life practice. But when he arrived at Maratik and also later on, he had a series of dreams where he practically discovered a brand new long life practice, the one that we do now in the Dzogchen community as the Mandarava practice, the circle of the life of Vajra, Sedrup Dorje Soti. And actually the story of this dream and the way he started to write about it is contained in this book that Jacobella Gaetani edited, and she also translated the text of the practice. I don't know if you see it, but anyway, there will be a bibliography at the end of the slides. So the last two slides are bibliography. And then there will be also, everything will be put online. They tell me, I just learned on the YouTube, so that you'll be able to see it again and if you're lost something. Okay. So this year there was a new pilgrimage to Maratika organized by the Shenjung UK and Mako in the person of Jamyang Oliphant and Jacobella Gaetani. And I saw many photos and videos from this trip that were very inspiring. So I thought I wanted to celebrate this anniversary by giving a new talk, this one in the library, so about the life story of Mandarava. And ancora non va. Okay. So I'm going to talk about Mandarava's life story, mainly referring to this book. This is the title in Tibetan. Okay, this book is called, doesn't matter because we won't read it, in Tibetan, Lacham Mandarava, etc. The Life of Princess Mandarava of Zahor, A Necklace of Jewels, published in New Delhi in 1973. So it's actually the Tibetan text published in Tibetan by this New Delhi publisher. And the contents and the foreword, etc., are in English. So in the contents, it says that this is a biography of the Lady Mandarava of Zahor, one of the two chief consorts of Padmasambhava, written down at the order of Padmasambhava by Lady Yeshe Tsogyal in 3 redactions. This text is the middle-length version, concealed at Gowo Wanri. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a photo of this place. It was rediscovered in a earwood monkey by Samteng Limpa, who is supposed to have been born in 1871. At the age of 14, so around 1884, and transcribed when the finder was in his 37th year. This biography is divided in 37 chapters, plus the colophon. Okay, can you show the next one? Okay, so this is a photo of the first folios of the Tibetan text. Okay. And the book I will refer to is this one, the English translation of the Tibetan text. It's called The Lives and Liberation of Princess Mandarava, the Indian consort of Guru Padmasambhava, Wisdom Publication, Boston, 1998, translated by Lama Chenam and Sanjay Kandro, with a very interesting and extensive introduction by Professor Janet Jatso. So let's first analyze a very important word in the title, the word namtar, that is actually made by two words, nampar tarpa, meaning complete liberation. And namtar is the Tibetan word for biography, which relates both to the fulfillment of the practitioner's goal, that is reaching complete liberation, and also to the strong example and inspiration that the life story of such an exceptional being has to other beings in order to help them on their own path, their own journey to complete realization. So the main point of an namtar isn't the facts of somebody's life, it's rather the way those facts have been used by some extraordinary beings to go beyond the conditionings and limitations of ordinary life. Okay, now next slide. Okay. Okay, now I'll tell you about this image. So now after this quite intellectual start, I want to shift to something different, as I did when I presented Yeshe Tsogyal's biography. So I want to try to let her speak. So Mandarava's life story is quite well known, actually. So, but the main thing is to try to use as much as possible her own words. So I do that by quoting her own words whenever it's possible. Actually, this biography, the narrator is a third person narrator, and which is actually Padmasambhava. But there is it's a little less direct. Anyway, there are quotes where she speaks in first person. So, as I did for Yeshe Tsogyal, once again, I would like you to close your eyes and imagine your Mandarava, the way you think she is. We're not doing practice, so it's perfectly okay to imagine her the way we want, the way we like it. And now let's imagine Padmasambhava surrounded by his main disciples in Tibet, gathered together in a temple to receive a very important tantric initiation to the mandala of the 8 Herokas, Drupa Kagyet. And so after this initiation, Yeshe Tsogyal asked the guru to reveal the life story of Princess Mandarava, and he agreed. So the guru graciously accepted and started speaking. And eventually Yeshe Tsogyal started writing because she was a very good and very fast writer. So actually most, if not all, of Padmasambhava's teachings have been put into writing by her, by Yeshe Tsogyal. And so yes, Yeshe Tsogyal vowed to reveal the story of Mandarava's lives and liberation in brief, and that whoever sees, hears, recalls, or encounters this biography will be placed on the path of perfect enlightenment. So now I'm quoting from the book. In the Akanishta paradise dwell the Dharmakaya Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri, and in the supreme Buddha realm of Sukhavati resides the Buddha Amitabha. known in Sambhogakaya form as the long-life Buddha Nitayus. His wisdom counterpart is the goddess Pandaravasini, who reveals inconceivable displays of enlightened body, speech, mind, noble qualities, and miraculous activities. So this is Mandarava's lineage. Her Dharmakaya is Samantabhadri, her Sambhogakaya is Pandaravasini, and her Nirmanakaya is Princess Mandarava, born in the human world in India. But before telling us the story of the Mandarava's actual incarnation, the book fills us in with the account of many previous births that she had in different eons and in different paradises. And actually, it says in 7 paradises. And only from the 13th chapter onward, we start hearing about Mandarava. So the previous births took place in different dimensions and eons, and there's no way for us to check the facts, the authenticity, but they all have a common trait. Evil spirits and dangerous beings are harming the inhabitants and the energy of those dimensions, and Mandarava, endowed with magical powers, transforming herself into some deity and using some mantras, tames and defeats those beings. Okay, now I want to explain this picture. It's because I like to think of an enlightened being coming into this world as a shooting star. In the middle of billions of stars, now there's one that comes to us. And this is also a simile that is used in some Tibetan practice books. So I really like this image. Okay, so now I think we can change it. So finally, in the 13th chapter of the book, Mandarava, before incarnating, sees the country where she's going to take her next rebirth. Now I'm quoting, the central continent. Central means most important because it's actually not in the center of India, but it's in the northeast of India. The central continent is the sacred ground of the 1,000 Buddhas of this eon, where Bodh Gaya, India, is located. Today it's called Bihar. To the east of Bodh Gaya is the country of Zahor, with the breadth of some 1,000 miles. So it's actually quite a large country. And further in the chapter says that Zahor is located within Bengal, which doesn't correspond to the most known and accepted tradition that actually says that the birthplace of Mandarava was in a place called Mandi in Himachal Pradesh, which is rather in the northern part of India, bordering Ladakh and Kashmir. So it says, now the entire land was blessed, and the flowers that had never appeared there began to bloom. Many varieties of birds began speaking the words of Dharma, and upon the roof of the palace, rainbow lights are amassed. The land's king, queen, ministers, their subjects, and their attendants all began having auspicious dreams and the indication of good fortune to come. So this belongs to a very widespread tradition that says that every time there is an enlightened being that is taking rebirth in the human world, there are some exceptional signs, wonderful things happening. Ok, anche quella dopo.
C'è ancora
Posso
gente-
fare anch'io, sì, sì,
c'è
sì.
ancora gente che chiede di entrare.
Ah, ok, ok. Sì, sì, fai pure. Okay, so this is just a photo of the area of Mandarava's birthplace. And then it goes on. At the time of their union, they, the king, Arshadara, and Queen Kauki, Mandarava's parents, both saw the 5 Buddhas and consorts appear before them in space. From the point of their union, the syllables Om, Hum, So, A, Mum, Lam, as well as the vowels and consonants, appeared in the colors white and red. They both experienced them dissolving into their crowns, and the 5 Buddhas naturally became the essence mantra, which then dissolved into both of their bodies. So, and this again, the wondrous signs that happen every time an exceptional being is conceived. So now white and red are the male lunar essence and the female solar essence. In many Western traditions, it's rather the opposite. It's the lunar principle to be considered as feminine, being somehow reflective, mysterious, moist, and the solar principle to be considered as masculine, being active, dry, outgoing. But this is different from the Tibetan Tantric tradition that considers white being the color of the seed, the semen, and red the color of blood. So according to this book, Mandarava's birth took place on the 10th day of the 10th month. So the 10th month of the waxing moon of every month is dedicated to Guru Padmasambhava. And the 10th month is corresponds more or less to December. In the year of the male wood horse, just before dawn, dawn is the time of the day in which our clarity is at its top, and the birth happened without pain. And as soon as she was born, Mandarava stood up and announced that she was the mother of all Buddhas, Pandaravasini, who was incarnating out of compassion and was to bear the name of Mandarava. And this happened in the middle of many miraculous, infinite, miraculous signs. And then she grew quite fast. And as she grew, the book tells us that just as Buddha Shakyamuni, as a young man, Mandarava happened to witness the suffering of birth, old age, sickness, and death, becoming acquainted with the noble truths of suffering. It says, until karma is exhausted, all the suffering that must be endured is beyond comprehension. When death arrives, it is far too late to feel remorse. I cannot help but weep uncontrollably at the futility of our condition. Now, my only thought is to go as quickly as possible where I can practice the sacred Dharma. She was 8 years old when she said these words. And her parents thought that she was going through something that we would call a growth crisis. And anyway, they decided to let her practice Dharma, but remaining in the palace, and she agreed. So now we are at the end of the 17th chapter, and we will skip a few where she performs many virtuous actions, like bringing many of her attendants and people in the country, bringing them on the path of Dharma, and taking away her mother's immense grief and sorrow for the death of her son, Mandarava's brother. Then the time came for her parents to find her husband, which of course she didn't want. Now we are in the context where a practitioner, a female practitioner, very often they didn't want to marry, they didn't want to have a husband and children, because being a practitioner implied a lifetime of retreats in secluded places and caves. So this couldn't, so having a family was considered to be an obstacle, actually, and especially by women. Well, also I could say because anyway, men weren't forced to marry, whereas women were. And so in any case, also Buddha Shakyamuni at some point abandoned his wife and kid, his royal palace and the life of a prince to go to meditate in a forest, feeling that in this way could be more useful to the whole mankind, and not only to his relatives and friends and subjects. So to my knowledge, most of the biography of ancient Tibetan female masters report that they refused being wives and mothers. And there are some exceptions. For example, Machila then, she married her practice consort, Topabhadra, and some traditions say that they had 3 children. Other traditions say that they had 8, I think, and a few other exceptions, but most of them, they didn't want to do it. And there is a very appalling description of the Yeshe Tsogyal's flight from her suitors. Actually, Mandarava was luckier than Yeshe Tsogyal because anyway, she refused to marry, but her parents said, okay, you know. But for Yeshe Tsogyal, things went differently. So she had to fly away from one of her suitors, and then she was caught and then managed to escape just to end up in the hands of another one. And she was treated in the most cruel way because she was beaten and whipped, and luckily she was saved by the king, Chesondetzen, who was a practitioner and he was a decent person. And he took her as his consort, and then eventually he gave her to Padmasambhava, because at that time women were given. Anyway, these are the words that Mandarava pronounced to refuse to be a wife. My only father, although I aspire to do only as you ask of me, this time I shall not go to another land with anyone. I will dedicate my life only to the path of Dharma. Without the freedom to practice the Dharma, I shall put an end to this life. And then after that, much to her distress, she was caught in the palace, more as a prisoner than as a guest. And eventually, the king had a new palace built in the enclosure of the royal palace, and for her and her retinue. And then the Indian monk Shantarachita, that is the one in the picture here, ordained the Mandarava and her retinue. And anyway, she also tried to escape, and she was caught. And when she was kept as a prisoner, she was very discouraged. But one night she had a dream of Vajrasattva that encouraged her to be free from despair. No? The parte? No, non voglio andare in Ah, okay. No, it's the right one. And now it comes the most famous account related, one of the most famous, let's say, accounts related to Mandarava, the meeting with Padmasambhava, which was, of course, preceded by a dream that she had of a Buddha emanation of Avalokiteshvara, who announced that the next day, always the 10th day of the lunar calendar, but this time it was of the 7th month, that is the most important Padmasambhava day in the year, and it happens to be in July. So he told her to go there, and that he'd be there and to meet her. It says, I shall bestow upon you the instructions that bring about liberation in one lifetime, Avalokiteshvara said. So she and her retinue went there, and suddenly in the space before them appeared the great Vajraguru Padmasambhava, radiating wondrous rainbow-colored light. She and her retinue felt irreversible fate and invited him to go to their palace and turn the wheel of Dharma. And then Padmasambhava went there, and he sat on the throne that was prepared for him. And as he had been asked to reveal his identity, he pronounced the famous speech that says that, now I'm quoting from another book. The speech is the same, but I'm quoting from this book. There is another Perma. Just because it's more poetic. So he said, with no father to engender me, other than the void of the essential flame, with no mother to bear me, other than the void wisdom, I rose from within a lotus in the center of Lake Dhanakosha. And through beautiful words, he stated his intention to turn the wheel of Dharma. So Padmasambhava was giving teachings to Mandarava and her retinue. They were all women, and they were all nuns because they'd been ordained by Shantarachita. And then after a while, word came to the village that a man of low caste, a cowherd, was had seen a man in Mandarava's palace who was staying there. And this man was a kind of, in his words, was a kind of vagabond, vagrant, dharmaban, we could say. And so at first the king didn't believe it, but he asked to find out who had been the source of this gossip. And then eventually he even offered a reward to the whole people of Zahor. So the cowherd spoke up and took the reward. And then the king ordered to the ministers that they go there and find this man who was living at daughter's palace, at his daughter's palace. And so they went there and they saw Padmasambhava, who, with the utmost dignity, was giving teachings to Mandarava and her retinue. And the ministers understood that he was a highly realized being. And so they went back. They didn't want to disturb him. But the king, out of his power trip, ordered that he be caught and burnt in a fire of firewood. And so the ministers went back and took him and put him on this fire and tried to burn him. And the king also ordered that Mandarava be brought into a dark pit full of thorns to remain there for 25 years without ever seeing the sun. And so they did it. And actually, there is also another tradition that says that Mandarava was put into the fire together with Padmasambhava, but it doesn't belong to this book. So, so they did it, and then after a while they went to sea, and guess what happened? The fire became a lake of sesame oil. In its center bloomed a marvelous, huge lotus flower surrounded by rainbows. Sitting on the very center of the lotus was the Vajra Guru Padmasambhava as an 8-year-old youth, with all the marks of perfection. The king went to see and immediately understood his huge mistake and was caught with remorse. He confessed his crime and offered his kingdom to the Guru. Padmasambhava accepted, and the king himself hung the yoke of the carriage around his neck and, replacing the horses, began pulling the carriage to the palace. And then the master sat on the king's throne. And this is a photo of the lake. Now, this place is called Sopema. So means lake, and Pema is Padmasambhava. And today it's called Renunciation, and it's quite near the birthplace of Mandarava. And so this is supposed to be the lake that appeared with when Padmasambhava was burnt. And later the king asked that Mandarava be brought out of the pit. But the ministers went there to tell her, they asked her, they begged her to come out, but she gave the most amazing answer by refusing to come out. She said, "No matter what happens, I intend to remain here for the duration of 25 human years. I shall never disobey the command of my father, the king." But eventually, her mother went there, and she refused again. But then they both started weeping, and then all the women around in the country started weeping. So that the king thought that Mandarava had passed away. So he went there himself and begged her to come out, which she eventually did. And then the king asked Padmasambhava to remain there and teach the Dharma, and offered Mandarava to him. And he did it in spite of her suitors who tried to start a war, but Padmasambhava prevented it, and the whole kingdom of Zahor entered the path of Dharma. And now we have another most significant feature of Mandarava's life story, the climax of her life. So after a while, we don't know how long, the Guru decides to leave Zahor and head to Marathika in Nepal to attain immortality. He addresses Mandarava praising her beauty and good qualities, and exhorting her to leave behind every possible attachment to samsara. He says, in this limitless ocean of suffering existence, the obsession with samsara that occurred before can only bring more pointless obsession. Now the time has come to prepare for a more meaningful future. Accomplish the sacred dharma, youthful princess. And then he departed to the east, ascending into space. And the next day, Mandarava departed too, but she went on foot. And on her journey, she found herself in dark forests, charnel grounds, ravines, scary places, everything without food and shelter. And when she was in total confusion and despair, the Guru appeared to her, and all her negativities were purified. And then they went together to Maratika. And then after practicing for 3 months the long life practice of Amitayus, they eventually accomplished the state of an immortal pure awareness holder, Rinzin of immortality. And after that, they practiced some wrathful manifestations like Hayagriva and Vajravarai to take away all the negativities that were still there. And then Mandarava compiled a treasury of more than 1,000 extensive and concise longevity methods, including an essential pointing out instructions. Amitayus, this is a long life practice, visualization of it's a group Kundu that we also do the Nyala Pema Dindu Sterma. And then in the following chapters, it says that Mandarava and Padmasambhava together subdued many hostile people and forces by transforming into Simamukha, this one, and the lion-headed Dakini, and other wrathful manifestations, and of how Mandarava did it by herself, and also she herself created some thermas. Then, following Padmasambhava's instructions, they both left for Tibet and Mount Kailash, and then to Nepal, to the Asura cave, to India, to Bengal and Zahor, and then to Odhyana, where the book says they brought the whole country to enlightenment. And then Mandarava went by herself to the mythical country of Shambhala. And now there is one fact that is not really dealt with in this biography of Mandarava, and that to me is very important. That is her encounter with Yeshe Tsogyal. When Mandarava went to Tibet, she and Yeshe Tsogyal met, and even though they had the same consorts, they didn't fight. And so I'm quoting from the 8th chapter of Yeshe Tsogyal's biography, the one that I showed before. Oh, this one. Okay. Mistress, sovereign strength. This is Mandarava speaking to Yeshe Tsogyal. May I be one with you. Hereafter, in the purity of infinite pure space, which is the pure expanse of lotus light, bathed in the beams of Pema Totren's love, may you and I together send out emanated forms to work enlightened actions, churning thus the three worlds of samsara. And with this prayer, she disappeared into space. This is just wonderful. It doesn't need any comment. And then in the following chapters, we are at the last chapter, the 37th. We read of how after the Guru himself had disappeared in space, Mandarava gave her last instructions to her disciples, who of course were in the utmost sorrow and tried to make her stay. She said, I am powerless to remain when the time has come for me to go elsewhere in order to help beings, she said. Now she speaks of herself in the third person. So she said, though this girl has health and energy beyond measure, she cannot control her departure when it comes to helping others. After she spoke, Mandarava's body became a mass of swirling light, and the entire sky filled with shimmering rainbows. The Dakini's form then seemed to fly like an arrow into space. And she gave her last speech while in space, so she was not visible any longer, but they could hear her voice. She says, listen, my devoted disciples gathered here. Maintain my last testament carefully within your hearts. Without wasting time, train your mind and accomplish the Dharma. This realm of samsara is like a dungeon. You must keep the great kindness of the precious Vajra Master in mind until you achieve limitless, common and supreme spiritual attainments. Uphold the essential nature of the clear light doctrine of Richard, and you realize the magical nature of mental projections until the stages on the path are perfected. If the mind never mistakes the absolute view, then it's easy to reach the state of enlightenment without hardship. After Mandarava spoke, two utpal flowers, white and red, emerged and traveled as light rays from her heart to the lands of Tibet and Nepal. Gradually, her body became invisible and then appeared as a delicate sphere of light, filling the entire sky. Having departed to a Kanishta paradise of Padmasambhava, she arose in the enlightened embodiment of the supreme sacred concert of primordial wisdom. At that moment, 900 of her devoted pure awareness followers simultaneously dissolved into rainbow bodies, leaving nothing behind. Let's remain a few seconds in the power of these words. So this was the last chapter of the biography. But then there is one more chapter that is actually a supplication to Mandarava's emanations. And so in this chapter, Yeshe Tsogyal thanks the Guru for giving them the teaching on the life and liberation of Princess Mandarava, and then implores him to give her and the other disciples gathered there a concise version of Mandarava's life and deeds. So Padmasambhava gave them an invocation in 33 verses, summing up the contents of the longer biography. And the book says, whoever simply reads this account with great faith will be free from the threats of contagious disease, war, misfortune, black magic, the threat of untimely death, and the obstacle to one's life would be reversed if one reads this account 100 times. And then it goes on listing all the benefits that one can have by keeping the text in homes or libraries, wearing it as a talisman, reading it, reciting it, and so on. There are really all possible benefits that one may think of, and even more. Actually, I found, it's in the bibliography, I found 2 versions online of this last chapter with this short invocation. It's a few pages. One is in Tibetan in English, and the other one is just in English. So if anyone wants to recite it or read it without buying the book, it's in the link. No, you find the link in the bibliography. So our last slide is up. Thank you very much. And let's have a look at the bibliography. In Tibetan, we should just one text, main in English. Online, the 2 links to the supplication, and then in Italian.
Thank you so much, Cristiana.